Alright, so what our next step is going to be is to take this dude and bring him into ZBrush. But before we do that, there's a couple things that we have to do. Now what you're looking at is just a more refined version of this guy. I did tweak him a little bit. I put this resolution gate around him and kind of framed out what I want him to look like in the end. You don't have to worry about that now. I just wanted to see for my own sake how to do that. So I'm going to turn this off. And what we're going to do is you'll see that I'm not too happy about some of the stuff. The jaw here is maybe a little bit too rough. I can tweak that inside of ZBrush. There's some other spots on here where maybe I could round this off a little bit more or tweak some of these other pieces, but it's good for now. Once we get into ZBrush, you'll see how we can go ahead and smooth out the model and then go from there. Right? Now before we do that, we have to take this guy and lay out the UVs on him. Now before I do any of that stuff, I need to go and delete the history. There we go. It's all gone, nice and clean. And then we're going to go to our materials. So I'm going to go to lighting and shading. I'm going to go to assign existing material or new material. And we're going to wait for Maya. Click, click, click. I'll click it a couple more times and find surface shader. So it's under the S's, under surface, under shader, and bam, there we go. So now he turns black. We click on the little map right here. We click on the checkerboard, and then we're going to go to 6 to see the texture. It looks kind of, chunky, so let's go to the place 2D texture. Let's add some repeats, 20 and 20, 30 and 30, whatever works for you. Now obviously this looks like he's wearing a mask and not checkers, so we need to fix that. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into the UV texture editor, and most of our stuff is going to be done in there. But first we're going to go over here to UV and do a planar mapping. So I go to the option box, and my option box is somewhere. Try it again. I'll bring it over, I think it's on the other screen. Try one more time first. Ah, there it is. Okay. So now I'm going to take this and shrink it down. And too small. And I'm going to project it into the X direction, which is going to be from the side view. It really doesn't matter which direction you start with, but that's a good one to go with. All right, so now you can see that I have squares on here. We don't have as many as we should have. So I'm going to save my file, and then I'm going to go to Viewport 2.0. So save the file, hit continue, Viewport 2.0. And then I see 1,000,000 squares. And this looks wonderful. Look how tiny those squares are. And they're all uniform from the side view. But then what happens is as we get to the front view, we see this. And that looks horrible. It's all stretched out. And if we went and tried to texture it, it would be stretched out there. So we're going to go to the UV texture editor. We're going to go blind because this white is just too white for us. So we go to texture and we turn off, or we go to image and turn off the display image. So here's the side view. And you can see right along the edge here, those are all those ones that are stretched out. That's why, because they're basically on top of each other. So I need to go through and grab the center and start to split this guy off. So I'm going to right click on him and go to edge and double click. And that selects that loop. I'm going to check it out, make sure it goes all the way around. Okay, right there. And it doesn't go here because the mouth is open, so we'll double click, shift double click that. Now, if yours didn't do that, that probably means that you do not have a quads everywhere. You probably have a triangle or a 5-sided. So now that I have this loop down the center, I'm going to go to polygons in the UV editor and say cut UV edges. Okay, so now that's cut. And then I'm going to go to UV. I'm going to click, not marquee. If you marquee, it'll do something bad. I want to just click on a point, then go to shell, select shell, and then move this off. Now you see that I have 2 of these. That's not going to change anything, but you see the point that we've split it. That's what we've done. So now that we've split it, you'll see that we have 2 sides. It looks pretty much the same. We need to then go through and basically cut up this model so that we can start to sew them back together and kind of lay this out nice and neat. So once I've done that, I'm going to cut off the neck too. So I'm going to go down to where the neck is. I'm going to double click one of these edges. That's a good one. And go to polygon, say cut UV edges. And there we go. Now this one, it is separate, but it looks like it's right on top of it. Didn't move or didn't do anything. Now we're going to go through and we're going to lay it out. So I'm going to grab the UVs, I'm going to marquee both of them. I'm going to go up to, do it again, polygons, and go to unfold. It's right there. Okay, now in the option box, we just make sure that the unfold 3D is clicked. We go to that button there, and we unfold it. And you'll see that we get these squares all over the place. They look gorgeous. If you could put that on a Christmas card, that would be the best thing to send out this year. Perfect. All right, so now what we're going to do is just kind of tweak this. Right now, the face is split up in two. Not preferable. The neck is split up in two. Not preferable also. So I'm going to grab these edges here. And you can see how they coincide to that edge in the back. And I don't want that, so I'm going to grab the other ones. So I grab that, that. And then you'll see how they highlight there. I go to polygons, move and sew. And now they're attached. Cool. So I'm going to do the same thing to the face. I'm going to grab the face, probably about the eyebrow area. And marquee that. There we go. And I'm going to shift marquee that. And make sure I didn't grab anything for the neck. You'll see that nothing highlights on the neck. That's what I want. If it highlighted on the neck, I deselect. If it highlighted along the face, we're good to go. Okay? So now I can go up to polygons again. And go to move and sew. And now they're kissing. Adorable. So now what we need to do is fix this, because once I did that, you see we get these funky areas. We need to straighten out those funky areas. So I'm going to go to UV. I'm going to marquee this entire mess. I'm going to go to unfold again. And you'll see how it unfolds again. And now that's nice and neat. It looks gorgeous. I'm proud of myself. Alright, so now our next step is just kind of organize this item. So we have this face, the UVs are all laid out, they're nice and even, looks beautiful. And what we need to do is we need to move these things so that we have enough room to work with. Now this top right quadrant here is important. We need to keep everything in there. So if I had enough room, I could move the neck into the next one and move the head into its own and stretch it out. But I don't have enough room. Okay, but if I did, if I had more room, this is what I could do, is I could take this and I could scoot it over to the other side. Now I also have to make sure that they're not sticking like halfway out. So you'll see, like, I don't want that to happen. I want it to stay within that top right quadrant. If it goes out of there, that's a bad thing. I do need to scale it down. I'm not going to scale it down from one of those little ones. I'm going to scale it down from the center and keep it uniform. Okay, now if I was going to swap this out to the other side, you can see how I can pop it over one unit, and now it's nice. It's all the way over the other one. If I don't need it over there, I'm going to keep it inside here, and that's where it's going to stay. Now, I do want to just kind of redistribute some of these. Let me scale it down a touch. Oh, one important thing to note is that if this thing is out of this box, this top right box at all, it's going to be bad news. If I move it over like this, and it's just a hair of a pickle right there, ZBrush is going to freak out, and Maya's going to freak out, and I'm going to freak out. Okay, so we have to make sure it's within that top right box, a little bit of border around it, perfect. I'm going to just take this piece and just kind of pull it up a little bit because we have some room, and scoot it over a little bit because we have some room. And just because I'm kind of OCD about this, I'm just going to organize that so my neck is below my head. It'll just make me a little bit happier in life. Okay. Now this part on the bottom is also a little bit crooked, so I think I want to fix that also. Select shell, rotate a smidge, pull it there, rotate a smidge more. It's good. It's good. All right, I need to leave it, or I'm going to be here forever. All right, so that's good. UVs are laid out. This is nicely organized. It's in the top right quadrant. Everything as far as the UVs go is wonderful. So I'm going to go back to object mode. Close that. Go back to object mode, click on the guy, and delete my history once again. All right, save our scene. All right, so now we're ready to go into ZBrush. So let's go into ZBrush. There it is. And 4R7 is the one we're using. This is always a good time to get a sip of your favorite beverage. Today's lecture is brought to you by Mountain Dew, so I will be taking a swig of Mountain Dew while we're waiting for this to open. When you open ZBrush, you get this box, and this is the light box. Yours may look different depending on what it opens. This is usually the default right here. You can play with these once you get a little more comfortable with the tools, but I would definitely wait until you've kind of played around a bit. So click Lightbox to make that go away, and Lightbox will go away. Alright, so now we need to bring our model in. So this is the ZBrush workspace right here, and it's a lot different than other stuff. So I'm going to go to Import Tool, that's where we bring our stuff in, is on the right. It says Import Tool, and I'm going to look down here and you'll see that one of the options for this is a Maya file. So right down here it says an MA file. Right there, okay? And the MA file is a Maya ASCII file. Now, we don't have a Maya ASCII file right now. Right now, if we look at our Maya file, we have a Maya B file, which is a Maya binary file, which is zeros and ones. A Maya ASCII file, if we go to File, Save As, and we give this a new name, and we choose from our list in the bottom, Maya ASCII. And that's actually like a text-based thing. A lot of programs can read text-based over binary stuff. So we save it, we hit continue, jump back here, find our project, and it's somewhere inside this big long list of files. There it is. Now you'll see that there is my file. It's an MA, so it loads. None of my other stuff is there because it's not an MA. And I hit open. And when I do, you'll see there's a big circle right here, and that's my project, and you'll see why it's like that in a second. I'm going to click and drag inside my viewport, and it brings my object into the view. Now it's a good time to start writing down hotkeys. So in order for me to spin around my scene, I need to hit the T key. Okay, and the T key allows me to spin around. If I don't do that, what's going to happen is I'm going to start drawing other shapes on top of this. See, so I drew another shape, and I drew another shape. Because didn't hit T to say this is like what I want to use, I'm basically painting in 2D. So I'm going to hit T. I'm going to hit undo one more time, draw it, and then hit T. There we go. Now I can spin around. So I'm just going to click and drag to spin around. And here's the subtool. And none of my other stuff came in. It just brought in my one eye for some reason. So let's figure out why it only brought in that one thing. So I want to go to my outliner. There it is. And I want to look at and see. It didn't bring in this file. Didn't bring in my project here. It brought in the first sphere. That's really weird that it did that. Now the two spheres, we really don't even need those in here because we're not sculpting the eyes. So those we can just delete. And then while we're at it, let's just save. Jump back to ZBrush, go back to Import Tool, grab our stuff, and we get an error. Of course we do. Alright, so let's figure out why we're getting an error. So we'll jump back to import again, just try it one more time, just to see. Nope, still doesn't like it. Okay, so now we'll jump back to Maya and see what the issue is. Okay, maybe it's these other layers, it doesn't like the other layers. Maybe it's triangles, maybe it's that we have a five-sided division somewhere. All those things it can cause. One other thing that it doesn't like is this big open area. So let's get rid of that big open area in the bottom, and then we'll see if that's going to fix it. Because ZBrush is kind of weird about those. So we're going to use the Append to Polygon tool. So we shift right click, grab that. And then we're just going to click on one edge and then click on the matching edge on the other side. Okay, then we hit Y to stay in the tool. And then click on that edge, click on that edge. Hit Y, click on that edge, click on that edge. Hit Y, And we're just going back and forth, clicking on one edge, clicking on the other edge, hitting Y. And if you make a mistake, you can hit delete or backspace, and that will undo your click. Like here, I made a mistake, so I undo, or I hit delete, and then do that. So we want to keep quads all over the place. So as I draw, I'm kind of looking to make sure I'm going to create quads. This last one, I need to click all 4 of these in order to keep this a quad. I can't go straight across. I need to go here first, then here, oops, there, and then enter. And that makes a quad there. Now there's 4 sides going all the way around. I'm going to do that same thing on this side. I'm going to click on that edge, hit Y, click on that edge, and that edge, hit Y, that edge, this edge, and enter. Okay, so now it's sealed. It's one solid object. That's what ZBrush loves, is one solid object. All right, one more thing we're going to have to do before we bring this into ZBrush is you'll see the bottom when we put this in, our UVs got kind of messed up. So I'm going to grab all the faces in the bottom here. There we go. And I'm going to go to UV, planar mapping, option box. Just project it. Doesn't matter which direction really, but I'll just put the Y. And then I'll just scale this down and just stick it out of the way, basically. There we go. Alright, so there we should be good. So delete history again. We save it again. Let's jump back to ZBrush. And this is going to be the workflow for lots of different programs when you're going between them. Still the same error. Let's keep going back and forth and trying to figure out what the issue is. Okay. Let's delete these layers. We can get rid of those and see if that's going to cause it, or that's what's causing it. I'm going to check the hypergraph first just to make sure there's nothing else kind of stuck here. Nope, everything looks good there. Let's wipe those layers out. There's nothing on those. No. Delete. Where are you at? There you are. There you are. Cool. Alright, save it again. Back to ZBrush. Back to import. Back to the file. Back to error message. Okay, and this is the frustrating thing about going back and forth between all of these, is that we get this, what's the problem? Give me a better answer than just like error. But it doesn't. It's kind of a jerk about the whole thing. Under mesh, there's a cleanup. I'm going to go there. And inside here, I'm going to make sure that I have non-manifold geometry clicked. Yeah, it's clicked. And I'm going to make sure that polygons with more than 4 sides is also clicked. It's a little bit further up. Right there. Okay. And I'm going to hit that. And you'll see that nothing highlights. If something highlighted, that would mean that there's an error and then I could address it. Maybe it's deleting faces, maybe it's merging vertices. I'm going to try duplicating my surface and resetting him and then saving. And then going back to this and then importing, and then I'll probably get the same error. Yep, same error. Okay. So I figured it out without the help of anything online at all. I did it all myself. Just ignore those, ignore that. So under mesh display, I'm going to go down to here. And under this color set editor, I'm going to delete this color set. And this is from when I did my sculpting, I froze a section. So mesh display, color set editor, click this guy, hit delete. Come on, delete. There we go. And then close it. And then we save, and then we go back to ZBrush, and then we click on import, and then we go to our file, and then we have our file. Hooray! We should celebrate. Let's take a smoking break. That's a joke. You shouldn't smoke. So now let's wait and see. So now the guy comes in this way. He's in edit mode. I can spin around him using just the left mouse button. That's all I'm doing. Left mouse button, drag around. There we go. Okay. If I hold shift while I'm dragging, he will pop into these different areas, which is pretty awesome. A lot of hotkeys to remember. Alt left mouse button. So Alt with the left mouse button will do that. And then Alt left mouse button. There we go. Alt left mouse button, and then you let go of Alt will allow you to zoom in. So Alt left mouse button, let go of Alt, and you can zoom in. It's really weird, but you'll eventually get used to doing that kind of thing. Okay. Now, let's pretend that you're zoomed in really, really far on this guy, like that, and you need to do that. You can't click here because you're going to start sculpting on your surface, and we don't want that to happen. So you have to go outside this little white line. See that gray line right there? You Alt, left click, and go there, start dragging, and then let go of Alt, and then you can zoom out, and then you are free to move around. Alright, so Alt lets you orbit, Alt with, or left mouse button lets you orbit, Alt and left mouse button lets you track or pan, and then Alt left mouse button, letting go of Alt. Oh geez, it's confusing to even say. We'll do that. Alright, so I undid back to where I had the stuff, so let me just re-import my guy. He's in edit mode, perfect. And I can spin around him. Okay. So now, if I wasn't in edit mode, you can see that, again, we're going to go back to the spot where we're painting all of these faces. And if I hit edit mode on the last one, you'll see that I can spin around this guy and move him around. But all the other ones are just kind of locked in there. ZBrush is actually like a painting program in 2D and 3D. So we can sculpt in 3D and we can paint in 2D. And as I click and drag, you can see how I can paint and sculpt right on top of the character. Which is kind of, obviously, it's a weird thing to do, but you can do it. Sometimes you can actually just use ZBrush just to create little flat pictures like you would in Photoshop, but you're getting kind of like the shading and the sculpting tools. So if you needed to paint a guy with a bunch of weird faces on his face, this is the perfect tool to do that. Okay, now if I go back to edit mode, you see I can spin around just this little guy, and all the other ones, again, they just stay there. Okay. So there's another one. Okay, paint's right on top of there, so I just need to zoom up a little bit. Where's he at? Where's he at? There he is. He's hiding. That's the shy version of the head. Let's make him bigger. Okay, so you get the idea that, you know, you don't want to do that. Okay, so I'm going to go over here to document, and I'm just going to say new document. Somewhere in the list is new. New. No save. Alright, so I'm going to grab the head again. There he is. I'm going to drag it out. There we go. And then I'm going to hit T so that I can edit it. And move him just kind of centered. Awesome. Okay. So now up here, this is how many polygons is made up of this guy. So this guy has 600 and some polygons that go into him. And this is the subtool that just shows where he's at. There he is. All right, so we can add more divisions to him by hitting Control D. There we go. And I've doubled this, so now we have about 2,000 divisions. Okay, so every time I hit Control D, it's just going to add more divisions, basically smoothing them out. And you can see we're getting something closer to what we had inside of Maya. So hit Control D again. There's another one, Control D again. Every time we hit Control D, we're just adding more and more divisions to him, smoothing him out more and more. And the cool thing about this is that we'll get a higher resolution of modification. So as we click and drag, you can see what we can draw on his face at this level. And then if I switch back to a lower resolution, so right now we're at, you know, this high 161,000 divisions. Smooth it out again, you can see how much finer there we go. Now we can go back and go back to the lower setting by hitting D or Shift D. Okay, so D smooths it out. Shift D will unsmooth it. It makes it rougher. Okay, you can see how fine detail you can get at these higher resolutions. You can't get that when you only have a few divisions. This is actually pushing and pulling all those points at that low, or the really high resolution. High. So that's if you want to write JP on someone's face with a weird symbol underneath, that's how you could write that. JP with a weird symbol. Okay, now I switch back to these other things and I can see it. I can just deform everything on this level. and I can still go back and see all those changes that I made on that character. Pretty sweet. Okay. So as we're working on this, we're going to work on several levels. We'll work on the lower levels for some stuff, the higher levels for other stuff. Typically, the more detail you want, the higher level you're going to be, the smoother you're going to be. But you still have the ability to go back and adjust some of those things. So make sure you're writing down these hotkeys as we go. Now this little bar is all of our undos. So I'm going to go back to here, at the very beginning, there's a star. And as I click and drag, you can see that I'm basically playing through all the undos. There's the head when I brought it in, and I'll just go back to about there. All right. So that's wonderful. Okay, you can see the different views using Alt and then, left mouse button with Shift, we can snap around. Now the S hotkey is for our brush size. All the hotkeys are up here too. So if you hover over this for a smidge, you'll see size S. And then here's the focus, here's the Z intensity. So as we start to play with this, these hotkeys will just make your life a lot easier. Okay. So, the Z intensity one is this, how much it's moving. So the first one at this lower rate was very little movement, but at that higher one we were getting a lot of movement. So typically we go really low and subtle and then build up. Over here is our brushes. There's a lot of different brushes that we're going to cover, but not a lot we're going to cover. We're going to cover a couple, but there's a lot. You get the idea. Here are the way that the brush is put out. So there's dots, which is, you have to go up to a higher level. There we go to see this. Okay. There we go. So I'm at the highest level right now, which is about 161,000 divisions. You can see I can take it down, take it up, and it all depends too on what you're painting as to how you want these things to come out. Sometimes dot works out great, sometimes freehand works great, sometimes drag rect or spray or any of the other ones will work good too. A lot of this is just going to be experience in playing with these. So as we go up to these higher levels here, we're going to add more finer detail. As we go down to the lower levels, we'll add basically just more structural details. Okay. So as we start to play with this character, there's some things that we just want to adjust as we go. So this is the dots, so I'm going to shrink my brush a bit. So I hit S, and I drag that. And it's hard to see in this one, but it's basically just putting like a bunch of dots, just like Photoshop does, where it paints a bunch of dots, and then the freehand is usually a bit smoother, but it can take a little bit longer to calculate. Okay, there's also spray coloring, dragging. These are all different ways that we'll play with the tools a bit. And then there's also alpha, which is really neat because it allows you to add texture. So here's this like scaly texture. And as I go to my method here, go there and change this to drag rect, and I drag, let's make theirs good, drag this out, you'll see how I can add this scaly texture to the character. And it looks pretty neat. And if I switch this to dots, you can see what dots is going to do is it gives us this kind of like overall thing. It doesn't look very good. But this drag rect, I can kind of layer these and sort these out so that it looks like we have a nice positioning of them. And it might take time, but it's going to look better than the spraying one. Alright, so let's undo that. Alright, so we're going to just switch this back to the alpha on this. This will switch back to dots. This will switch to alpha off. There we go. These both off. And then we can start to kind of sculpt on the character. And playing with the Z intensity, you can see how much bigger we can get that to go. Now I'm going to turn on Activate Symmetry so that as I paint one side, it paints the other, making it look symmetrical. You can change the direction right here. Okay, it's all under the Transform tool, so you just go up to Transform, Activate Symmetry. And then I'm just going to go and switch my brush. I'm going to go to my tablet on, make sure this is activated. I'm just going to adjust some of these parameters real quick. There we go. Okay, more stuff that you can play with. The menus in here are really deep, but you don't really use all of them. So now it's just a matter of going through and just adding some of that detail and making sure, obviously, your brushes work. As I paint with my stylus, I want to make sure that I'm getting pressure, so that as I push harder, I'm getting a different result than when I don't push hard at all. And that's exactly what I'm getting. Okay, now it does look kind of like splotchy. I can change this to freehand and try that, but just it's still doing it. It's just the resolution at this point that's causing that. So once I hit Control D and add, yeah, still doing it. Once I hit Control D and add another division, that will definitely add some more stuff to it. Okay, or shrink my brush down. My brush is too big. It can also cause that to look really splotchy just because of how big it is. Alright, so I'm going to go back to a lower level here. So Shift-D, Shift-D, Shift-D to get all the way back to a lower level. And I'm going to go find the Move brush. Now under here I can go to M and then find Move. And you see how it isolated all the M's, so I can just go to Move from this point, right there. And with the Move brush, I like to be on a lower level, so I'm going to hit Shift-D to get to a lower level. And I like to have a bigger brush too. Now at this point, I didn't go to a lower level yet. I am just kind of pushing and pulling some of these bigger areas, and then I'll get to that.